We'll go on to number 12, and it's the Finance Committee report. I believe you have 4 actionable items.
Yes,
Okay,
we should be quick. So action item number 12.2, pupil accounting amendment. Just clarification on when to count students for SOEP beyond counting them from including information on early graduation for getting credit towards SOEP. So the recommended action from the committee is that the board approves R277-419 draft 2 on second and final reading.
so the motion from the committee is that the board approves R277-419 pupil accounting draft 2 on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm opposed. Who else is opposed? Board Member Klein.
All right, action item number
12.3.
Thank you.
I just have it right here in front of me.
Thank you. I'd moved on to the motion document. Thank you. Recommended action is the Finance Committee recommends that the board direct staff to agree to the negotiated rates proposed by the Department of Education and seek resolution of the position being removed during negotiations for the state fiscal year 2024 rates. The Finance Committee also recommends using $500,000 of one-time funds to cover the costs of the Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement and the administrative position from unencumbered carry-forward balances. And I'm happy to answer questions or defer to staff if we need to. This resulted from the denial of approval by the Department of Education for a couple of positions that were being paid out of the indirect cost pool. And so the recommendation is we agree to those positions they have approved and then seek negotiation with them to get those reapproved next year. In the meantime, cover it from one-time funds and $500,000 so we can keep Patty with us.
Or whoever it may be.
That's yes. This is the keep Dr. Norman stopgap measure. So there you go.
Thank you. Board Member Klein?
Just a question. I guess I was surprised to see that it looks like the federal government pays for your salary, for Deputy Norman's salary. Is that right?
I can answer that, or we can go to staff more broadly, but it comes out of the indirect cost pool, which is a mixture. And so some of the federal funds that fund federal programs can be used directly to fund a position that oversees the programs. Others, where the position is more broadly over several programs that are federal and state, the federals say, no, you cannot use those program funds for this federal program to pay that position. So it comes out of the indirect cost pool that is both state and federal money. But when the feds say you can't do it, we have to find another way to do it. And so we're talking about using state funds, which I think is a good adjustment. And then we can see if we qualify for the indirect cost pool next year or find some other way to fund it. But that was an education for me too. This whole indirect cost pool funding programs and positions is a little bit complicated. Again, some of them, the position goes with the program. Others, it's kind of, as Dr. Norman does, she covers a number of programs, and that's why the indirect cost pool can come into question. They've been more aggressive with us, the DOE, this last time around. It's always been fine, but they had new personnel that said, we don't see how this works. So the proposal is to use state money for now and then evaluate next year what we can do.
Has that always been the case for this particular position, or is this a new thing?
Well, it's first time, to my knowledge, they've declined.
Yes.
It has been paid out of the indirect cost pool for a while, though, correct?
No. Deborah?
Yeah. So it's been paid out of that indirect cost pool. This is the first time they've stepped up and said, no, that's
And why is
too diverse.
Yeah, okay.
Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself, please.
Deborah Jacobson, Assistant Superintendent of Operations. So each year we go through a negotiation with the federal government. Most grants, you cannot pay staff that are not directly working on that grant. So as a way of recapturing some of the funds for the administrative or overhead costs for the agency, we go into negotiations with the feds to come up with a rate that they feel comfortable with us charging against all of the grants. In this particular case, every year, they evaluate every single position that we actually have in the indirect cost pool or that gets paid from the indirect cost pool. And this time around, they had determined that this position was not eligible. They felt like it should be directly charged to the federal grants. So it's an interpretation disagreement in this case. So
Is
just,
is
Go
this
ahead.
going to be an ongoing issue from year to year? Or, and if so, do we have a solution, an idea for how to solve that? Or is this something that you're willing to go to bat for every year and deal with?
Go ahead.
so we're hoping it won't be. I'll say that. We want to renegotiate next year to try and come to terms with come into an agreement with the interpretation of it and see if we can't get it back in there. But every single year, every single position is reevaluated. Last year, it actually was our communications team that was pulled out. So it's hard to say, but we're hoping that we can defend it and have it be put back in this next year.
Thank
And I
you.
think we discussed in committee, is this something where we look at a more stable state direct funding source of some sort? And so if we're vulnerable to federal kind of changes and also wanting to detach and be more state-based than federal, this is an opportunity to look at that during the next year.
Thank you. I think it hits Patty because she's over programs, and that's.
Yes.
Right, yes, so many programs with so many complicated
Yep.
grants and such, yep.
Okay, so the motion from the committee is that the board directs staff to agree to the negotiated rates proposed by the Department of Education Finance Committee 3, September 9th, 2022, and seek resolution of the positions being removed during negotiations for the state fiscal year 2024. The committee further recommends that the board approve using $500,000 of one-time funds from an unencumbered carry-forward balance to cover the costs of the Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement and the administrative assistant positions. Seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, action item 12.4, state fiscal year 2022 carry forward balance status and approval for use. Committee motion is, the Finance Committee recommends that the board approve the spend plans for the unencumbered state fiscal year 2022 carry forward balances. And I'll just note, we had a good deep dive on these unencumbered carry forward balance spend plans, got to ask a lot of questions. We also invited during finance, each department to include a bit of a cover memo or a letter, just kind of outlining any significant decisions that were made and the basis for those decisions. So you've probably seen that in the backup, something a little bit different, but we appreciate everybody putting their thoughts together on that and letting us kind of see, you'll see it in the spend plan itself, but you'll also see the cover memo kind of highlighting some of those decisions that were made. So appreciate all the thought that went into those plans.
Thank you. It was nice to be able to listen to that meeting and hear that discussion as well. So the motion from the committee is that the board approve the spend plans for the unencumbered state fiscal year 2022 carry forward balances. Seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed?
No.
Board Member Klein is opposed. 12.9.
12.9, let me just get the title here.
Education
Let's see.
Regulatory Sandbox.
Thank you. There we go. The recommended action from the committee, Finance Committee, is the board approves R277-919, draft 3 on second and final reading. And I'll just say on this one, this came up to the board, it was sent back to committee, we made some further revisions, the vote was unanimous, and it's brought back up to the board.
Thank you. So the motion before the board is the board approves, that the committee moves that the board approve R277-919 Education Regulatory Sandbox Draft 3 on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed, Board Member Klein. Thank you so much.